everybody, Ben Woodruff here, and in today's episode we're talking about an Ice Age animal, which is, as you know me, the Ice Age is my thing. I love the Ice Age, the Pleistocene, the animals, the history, the prehistory, I love it all. And we're going to be talking a little bit about mammoths. We're going to talk about this because there is a very important artifact that very few people that I talk to are aware of. And so the point of this video is just to create awareness. I want people to be aware of it so that when you are forming your understanding of history and prehistory, that this is a fact that's locked in there here. So what happened was, a few years ago, researchers at the Smithsonian Institute and the University of Florida announced the discovery of a bone fragment. It was approximately 13,000 years old, and this was in Vero, Florida. So what they found was an incised image of a mammoth or a mastodon. Now, this engraving is the oldest known example of an Ice Age depiction of a proboscidae in the New World. So in other words, members of the elephant family, right? We do have a few images, I'll get to that in a minute. This is the oldest known. The bone was discovered in Vero Beach, Florida by James Kennedy, who collected the bone, and later when he was cleaning it, he discovered the engraving. So we're going to talk about this, but we need to have a little bit of a background first and talk about these animals. So elephants or proboscids in America, yes, we had several. For example, we had woolly mammoths, Columbian mammoths, gomphotheres, platybelodons, mastodons. We had a wide range of these species. Now, finding their bones is not that rare. For example, I've got on my own collection, this is the humerus bone, which is this one right here on you, of a mastodon. And I also have, it's down here. This is the femur. Now the ball and socket joint are broken off at the top, unfortunately. But this is the femur of mastodon. It's heavy. It's kind of fun. These are pretty commonly found throughout the world, anywhere where mammoths and mastodons live. Now, what's the difference? I think it's important to know a difference. Mastodons were browsers. They lived in forests alongside giant ground sloths who were also browsers. So these guys are eating leaves and fruit. One of the most important fruit they consumed is the fruit of the Osage orange tree. They would eat it whole and go elsewhere and poop out the seeds. Nowadays, there's no big enough browsers doing that, so Osage orange trees, these bumper crops, just kind of land on the ground and go nowhere. Now, the others, all those other elephants I listed, were grazers, so they're open country animals. These are open country grazers. They're eating grass and things out in the open prairies, plains. They're not eating so much from the trees. There's a number of these species. And every time we think we will find a cutoff date, like this was the most recent of them, and then we'll find one that was more recent, and then more recent. For example, gomphotheres. Gomphotheres were believed to have gone extinct in America around 1 million years ago, and then they found one in New Mexico that had been killed out on some sand dunes, and it dated back to like 9,000 or 10,000 years old. And it's like, well, that rewrites everything. That's a lot more recent than 1 million years old. So the thing is, anytime you find something, the odds are you're not finding the very last of a species. And statistically speaking, you never will. Because honestly, fossilization or ancient preservation is so rare, the odds are that the very last individual of a species got preserved is statistically impossible. But we gotta anchor ourselves to truth, so we can always say, well, if this is the most recent of a species that we date it to, we know that they at least were around that long, and maybe longer, but at least that long. So these mammoths, it's kind of interesting because it used to be there was no thought that there was any depiction. We knew from Clovis and Folsom's kill sites, and now even earlier sites, that people did hunt, kill, and butcher these animals. We know this for a fact. But we didn't have material depiction, archaeological depictions of such a thing? Well, there's a few kind of exceptions. There's one that's famous that I did a video on, went and visited. Well, actually, I visited a couple in this video. I'll put a link to it in the description, where I went to visit what's called the Moab Mammoth. Now, I do believe this to be real. I do believe it to be more recent than 10,000 years ago. And I think that if you look at the canyons of the Colorado Plateau, they're so vast, it does not surprise me to think that there could be a few straggling mammoths here and there that made it to much more recent times. We know at another cave in Utah, we know it had heaps and heaps of woolly mammoth or Columbian mammoth dung balls, where these mammoths would go in this giant cave. So we know they were down there roaming these canyon lands, and to have a few survive into more recent times and to be depicted, I think it's entirely possible. There's another one that some people try to say is a buffalo, and I can see why, but again, I see distinctly a trunk and two tusks coming out on this, and I see why people liken it to a buffalo, but I think this one has the possibility of being a depiction of a mammoth or a mastodon. Then there's some near, I guess I don't want to mention the area, near Blanding, Utah, I'll say, that gets you within 40 miles. Near Blanding, Utah, and these sites are confirmed, and several depictions at the site of mammoths, and it's pretty exciting. But these are that we're talking about, this video that I want to make you aware of, are different because they are incised into a bone. Now, the belief is that it is probably a mammoth or a mastodon bone. It could be possibly a giant ground sloth bone. It's this guy here. Probably not. It could be, but the thought is that it's a mammoth bone, and they carved a mammoth into it. At first, the people thought, all the researchers were skeptical, and this is a hoax. This is so good. This is so clearly and perfectly a mammoth. It's got to be a hoax. But research chemically into the bone and research into the incisions incising into the bone confirmed that it seems to be 100% legitimate. And that makes this, again, this is about 13,000 years ago, which makes this the oldest confirmed figurative depiction in the New World. Now, people were here earlier, but this is the oldest we have, and it makes this piece incredibly valuable. Now, my understanding was that this gentleman, James Kennedy, was going to sell it up for auction, and back when I was researching it, there was a big debate like, no, please don't, let's have this be available to the general public. I don't know where that's at currently, but I just want people to be aware of this piece because it's absolutely breathtaking. There's lots of old world cave art and depictions of mammoths, like Chalby Cave, France. There's a lot of places where we see this in Siberia. But to see it so well and so beautifully done in the New World, 13,000 years old, is incredible. So who knows what's still out there? There's got to be so much more to be found and to be known. But again, I want people to be aware of this artifact because it's unique. Because again, it's a bone, it's not on rock, and it's beautiful depiction artwork. And I just want people to be aware of it. So let me know your thoughts and your comments. When do you think the last mammoths went extinct in the New World? And if you could hit subscribe, it really helps me keep the channel up and going. And always remember that life is a gift. So never stop learning and never stop exploring. We'll see you next time.